The Way You Make Me Feel, Secrets of the Southern Belle and the Taken Lord. Welcome back to the Will I Be Happy channel, where we delve into stories that explore the depths of love, passion, and the human heart. Today's tale is set in the post-American Civil War South, where society's expectations often clash with the heart's desires. Join us as we uncover the story of Lady Jewel, a Southern belle whose life takes a dramatic turn when she meets the enigmatic and wealthy Lord Pillsbury. This story is filled with passion, scandal, and the ultimate choice between duty and true love. Sit back and get ready to be swept away by this romantic drama. Lady Jewel Abraham was the epitome of Southern grace and beauty, a 23-year-old woman whose presence lit up the grandest of ballrooms and whose reputation was impeccable. Her life in Charleston was a series of perfectly executed social appearances, tea parties, and charitable events. With her dark, cascading curls and eyes as blue as the ocean, Jewel was the darling of post-war Southern society. But despite the attention of many eligible bachelors, Jewel remained unattached, which puzzled her family and delighted the gossip. Jewel's younger sister, Gracie, was the opposite in many ways. Where Jewel was calm and composed, Gracie was spirited and inquisitive. Barely 17, Gracie had a knack for being in the wrong place at the right time, at least from her perspective. With her bright red curls and a mischievous twinkle in her green eyes, Gracie became well known for her curiosity and habit of finding out things she wasn't supposed to know. Jewel adored her little sister, but she often found herself having to keep Gracie out of trouble. At one of the season's most anticipated events, the Grand Summer Ball hosted by the reclusive and fabulously wealthy Lord Dalton Pillsbury, Jewel's carefully ordered life was forever altered. Dalton had come to Charleston from the north, his wealth unmatched by any in the city, his lineage old and respected. He was a mystery and allure man, known for his striking good looks, sharp intellect, and the air of danger that seemed to follow him. As Jewel entered the opulent ballroom of the Pillsbury estate, her breath caught in her throat. The house was magnificent, with chandeliers dripping crystal and gilded mirrors reflecting the light in 1,000 directions. But it was Dalton who held her attention. He stood at the far end of the room, his tall, commanding figure dressed impeccably in black, his dark hair slicked back, his green eyes piercing and intense as they locked onto hers. "Lady Jewel," he greeted her with a slight bow as he approached, his voice smooth as silk. "May I have the honor of this dance?" Jewel felt a thrill of excitement and trepidation as she placed her gloved hand in his. "The honor is mine, Lord Pillsbury," she replied, her voice steady despite the unexpected rush of emotions swirling within her. As they glided across the polished marble floor, Jewel felt as though she were in a dream. Dalton's touch was electric, his presence overwhelming. There was something in his gaze that made her feel both exhilarated and unsettled, as though he saw right through the layers of decorum that she wore like armor. "It's the things that you do," Dalton murmured, as he led her through the intricate steps of the waltz, his breath warm against her ear. So physical. His voice was low, meant only for her ears, sending a shiver down her spine. "And the things that you say," Jewel whispered in response, her heart pounding in her chest as she realized she was no longer in control of the dance, of her feelings, of anything. The night passed in a blur of music, laughter, and stolen glances. But as Jewel tried to navigate her growing feelings for Dalton, she couldn't help but notice Gracie's watchful eyes. The girl had been flitting about the ballroom all night, keenly observing her sister and Dalton's every move. Jewel knew her sister well. Gracie's curiosity was piqued, which could only mean trouble. As seasons turned, Jewel found herself increasingly drawn to Dalton despite her mother's warnings, her friends' knowing looks, and Gracie's incessant prying. Their meetings became more frequent, their conversations more intimate. Something about him made her feel alive in a way she had never felt before, a spark, a thrill, a sense of being seen and understood. But as their connection deepened, so did Jewel's turmoil. She knew that Dalton belonged to another, that his heart was not hers to claim. Yet she could not resist him, could not turn away from the fire that burned between them. One afternoon, as they walked together along the riverbank, Dalton turned to her with such intensity that Jewel felt her breath catch in her throat. "Jewel, there is something I must tell you," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "It is not fair to you or to anyone else for me to keep this inside any longer." Jewel's heart pounded in her chest as she waited for him to speak, her mind racing with possibilities. But before he could continue, a figure emerged from the shadows, a beautiful and regal woman with the same piercing green eyes as Dalton. Jewel knew at once who she was. Before Lydia Clark even spoke, her presence alone commanded the scene. She was the kind of woman who commanded attention wherever she went. Tall and statuesque, with raven black hair that fell in perfect waves around her sharp, angular face, she possessed a beauty that was both captivating and intimidating. Her piercing green eyes, cold and calculating, narrowed as she took in the sight before her. Clad in the finest silks and adorned with jewels that spoke of her immense wealth, Lydia was the epitome of elegance, yet there was a hardness to her, a fierce determination simmering just beneath her polished exterior. She was not someone to be trifled with, and Jewel felt the total weight of her disdain as those green eyes bore into her. "Dalton!" the woman called out, her voice cold and commanding. "We need to talk!" Dalton's face hardened, his jaw clenching as he turned to face the newcomer. "Not now, Lydia," he replied curtly, his hand tightening around Jewel's. But Lydia would not be dismissed so easily. "Yes, now," she insisted, her gaze shifting to Jewel. "I see you've found another plaything, Dalton. How predictable." Jewel felt as though she had been slapped. Her cheeks burned with humiliation, and she pulled her hand free from Dalton's grip. "Is this true?" she demanded, her voice trembling with anger and hurt. "Am I just another conquest to you?" Dalton's eyes were filled with pain as he reached for her, but Jewel stepped back, shaking her head. "I trusted you," she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "I thought you were different." "It's not what you think," Dalton protested, but Jewel couldn't bear to hear his excuses. "You belong to another," she said, her voice breaking. "I don't want to hurt anybody, but my heart just can't hold back. It's the way you make me feel, Dalton. You've spun my world around, and now I don't know how to walk away." Unbeknownst to Jewel, Gracie had followed them and witnessed the entire exchange from behind a cluster of magnolia trees. Her young heart was conflicted. She loved her sister and wanted to protect her, but she was also drawn to the drama unfolding before her eyes. Unable to resist, Gracie rushed home, determined to tell their mother everything she had seen. The confrontation with Lydia was over, and Jewel retreated from Dalton's world, throwing herself into the safety and predictability of her social circle. It was during this time that she found herself courted by Nathaniel Montgomery, a wealthy plantation owner whose reputation was as impeccable as his manners. Nathaniel was everything Dalton was not: steady, reliable, and above all, unattached. Desperate to escape the pain of her failed romance with Dalton, Jewel allowed herself to be swept up in Nathaniel's attention. He was kind and considerate, and offered her the stability she had always been told to seek in a husband. When he proposed to her one warm summer evening beneath the glow of the setting sun, Jewel accepted, hoping that by doing so, she could finally put Dalton behind her. But Gracie, ever the nosy little sister, was not satisfied with this turn of events. She had seen the way Jewel looked at Dalton, and she knew that her sister's heart still belonged to the enigmatic northern nobleman. Determined to make things right, according to her definition of right, Gracie sought out Dalton, cornering him during one of his visits to town. "You need to fix this," Gracie said, her green eyes blazing with determination. "My sister doesn't love Nathaniel. She loves you, even if she won't admit it. You have to stop the wedding." Dalton was taken aback by Gracie's bluntness, but couldn't deny the truth of her words. Jewel's engagement to Nathaniel was a desperate attempt to move on, and deep down, Dalton knew he couldn't let her go without a fight. Meanwhile, as the days turned into weeks and the date of her wedding drew closer, Jewel found herself unable to ignore the nagging doubt that gnawed at her heart. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't forget Dalton, the way he made her feel, the intensity of their connection, the passion that had burned between them. It was as though he had left an indelible mark on her soul that Nathaniel, for all his virtues, could never erase. The final straw came one stormy night as Jewel sat in her parlor, staring at the engagement ring on her finger. A sudden knock at the door startled her, and when she opened it, she was shocked to find Dalton standing there, drenched in the rain and breathless with urgency. "Jewel," he began, his voice raw with emotion, "I've made a terrible mistake. I let you walk away because I thought it was the right thing to do, but I can't live without you. I know you're engaged to another, but I had to come and tell you the truth." Jewel's heart pounded in her chest as she listened to him speak, her emotions swirling in a chaotic mix of love, anger, and confusion. "Dalton, I'm engaged," she replied, her voice trembling. "It's too late." But Dalton shook his head, stepping closer. "No, it's not. Not if you feel the same way I do. I've tried to move on, but I can't. You're the one I want, Jewel. It's the way you make me feel. I can't walk away from that." Tears welled in Jewel's eyes as she realized the truth in his words. No matter how much she wanted to believe that her engagement to Nathaniel was the right choice, she knew deep down that she could never love him the way she loved Dalton. "I don't care what they say," Dalton continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm loving you anyway." At that moment, Jewel knew what she had to do. She reached up, removing the engagement ring from her finger and placing it gently on the table beside her. "I can't marry Nathaniel," she said, her voice steady with resolve. "Not when I love you." Dalton's eyes filled with relief and love as he took her hands in his. "Then let's leave tonight. We'll go somewhere far away, start over where no one knows us." Jewel nodded, knowing he was right. "Yes," she whispered. "Let's go." Unbeknownst to them both, Gracie had overheard this entire exchange from the stairwell. Though she had initially set out to help Jewel, hearing the passion and resolve in her sister's voice made Gracie realize the gravity of the situation. She hurried back to her room, determined to keep this secret to herself, understanding that her interference had already gone far enough. As Jewel and Dalton made their way out of the house and into the night, Dalton pulled Jewel close. "It's the way you make me feel," he said softly, "spinning my world around. I don't care what they say, Jewel. I'm loving you anyway." With those words, the storm clouds parted to reveal a sky full of stars, a new beginning waiting for them on the horizon. As they made their way out of Charleston, the tension of the last few days began to lift, replaced by a sense of freedom and excitement. Jewel glanced over at Dalton, who was guiding their horse-drawn carriage with a steady hand. "So, what's next for us, Lord Pillsbury?" Jewel asked, her tone playful as she leaned back against the seat. "A quiet life in the mountains? Or perhaps we'll become infamous outlaws, robbing carriages and stealing hearts across the West?" Dalton chuckled, his green eyes sparkling with amusement. "Outlaws, you say? I think you'd make a fine bandit queen, Jewel, though I must admit I'm not sure I have the patience to polish my spurs every day." Jewel laughed, the sound light and musical in the crisp night air. "Well, I've always fancied myself more of a mysterious recluse, living in a grand mansion atop a hill with only my faithful hound and a scandalous past for company." Dalton grinned, shaking his head. "That does sound intriguing, but I prefer the idea of us building a life together, where the only thing we steal is each other's time." Jewel smiled warmly, her heart swelling with affection. "You always know just what to say, Dalton." "Only when I'm speaking to you, my love," he replied, leaning over to kiss her cheek. "Now, let's get away from this place and start our adventure. No banditry required." As they traveled further from Charleston, the landscape began to change, becoming wilder and more untamed with every passing mile. The world around them was breathtaking in its raw beauty. Towering mountains with jagged peaks rose against the sky, their snow-capped summits glistening in the fading sunlight. Vast, untamed forests stretched as far as the eye could see, with ancient trees standing like sentinels of a forgotten world. Rivers cut through the land with a ferocity that spoke of nature's untamed power, their waters roaring and churning as they cascaded over rocks. The air was crisp and filled with the scent of pine and earth, a constant reminder of the rugged wilderness that lay just beyond the safety of their carriage. It was a land of both danger and wonder, where the promise of adventure lurked behind every shadow, a perfect reflection of the new life they were about to begin together. They always remembered the trials they had endured, the obstacles that had tried to tear them apart, but in the end, it was their love that triumphed, a love that had been tested and emerged stronger, brighter, and everlasting. Gracie visited often, her mischievous smile never far from her lips. Still, she had learned to keep her curiosity in check, at least when it came to matters of the heart. As they walked hand in hand through the fields of wildflowers that surrounded their home, Jewel looked up at Dalton, her heart full. "It's the way you make me feel," she whispered, leaning into him. "Every day, I fall in love with you all over again." Dalton smiled, his heart full of the same emotion. "And I, you, my love. I, you." Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey on Will I Be Happy? Jewel and Dalton's story is a powerful reminder that love often defies societal norms and expectations. From the passionate dance that sparked their connection to the trials that nearly tore them apart, their journey shows us that true love is worth fighting for, even when the odds are stacked against you. If you enjoyed this story, remember to give it a thumbs up, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to our channel for more tales of love, heartbreak, and the pursuit of happiness. Until next time, remember, happiness is often found when we follow our hearts.